To Alaska?
No.
Oh,
We're
okay.
Well, good evening, and welcome to the Board of Education meeting for Greeley Evans School District 6. This is the 11th day of October 2021. This meeting will now come to order. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Richards, will you call the roll for us, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Present.
Ms. Smash? Mr. Matthews?
Present.
Ms. Mueller?
Present.
Ms. Pappas? Mrs. Solis?
Present.
Mr. Talley?
Present.
5 members present.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. Ms. Pappas and Ms. Mash are excused for personal business. Well, we are into October and 2 months now into our school year, and we're excited that this school year is proceeding somewhat normally this year, and that we've been able to have football games and band concerts and all the fun things that we are used to having. We do have some good news on the horizon, and that's this Thursday we're going to have our 4th beam topping ceremony, and this one's going to be at the Toynton Academy of Pre-Engineering. That is the first new school that is not a replacement school that we have built in this school district in about 20 years. Over the course of that time, we've added somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 students, depending on when you start measuring. And that is an exciting day for us, and exciting day for all in our district. We also want to recognize that today is Indigenous Peoples Day, and today Indigenous peoples, or we celebrate rather, the invaluable contributions and resilience of Indigenous peoples. And we also want to recognize the land on which we hold this meeting is in the territories of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples, and thus is tied to the history and cultures of these Indigenous peoples. We appreciate this connection and pay respect to those who have stewarded this land throughout generations. Further, we want to recognize the contributions that Indigenous peoples have made throughout history and education and in scholarship and the arts, in countless other fields. They are integral to our nation and our culture and our society. We want to recognize that Indigenous people have served and continue to serve in the United States Armed Forces with distinction and honor at one of the highest rates of any group defending our security every day. And we have a great example of this on our own board in Mr. Talley, who serves our country in the National Guard. And so finally, we want to recognize that though we only have a small percentage of District 6 students who are Indigenous, this heritage is no less significant than any other group, and we want them to feel pride in their culture and this heritage, their heritage. And so we're excited to recognize today as Indigenous Peoples Day.
So, yeah, quick clarification. So many of us who are Latino actually have Indigenous blood. I personally have Apache in my background, so there are many Latinos that have Indigenous blood that are part of our district, so just wanted to clarify.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Solis. We are now to our public participation, and Ms. Richards, I don't believe we have anybody. All right. So our next item on the agenda is our work session report. And Ms. Richards, will you read our work session report, please?
Board of Education President Michael Matthews began the work session with comments and updates from board members, and then proceeded to review the calendar of upcoming events. Mr. Nathan Fall, District 6 Legal Counsel, led a discussion of the CASB resolutions. Board members had time for questions and comments. The board discussed community engagement and concluded by debriefing the work session.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. Our next item is our superintendent's report. So Dr. Pilch, I'll give this portion to you.
Thank you, President Matthews. Just to have some good news to share tonight and some information. Last week on Wednesday, a team of us, including Ms. Pappas and Ms. Mash, were able to attend the Great Education Colorado annual luncheon. It was really a beautiful event. It was at the Botanical Gardens, and it was an honoring of Dr. Joyce Brooks, who was honored that day by the Great Ed Colorado. Really a beautiful event. I was privileged to be given, I think I was given 7 minutes, and I think I took 8 or 9. But I had the privilege of telling our story of how we are spending our ESSER funding, our COVID relief funding, and what our plans are, and then to begin to share a little bit about the results that we're getting with those dollars. And the theme of the afternoon really was money matters, and that to get results, it takes money and resources to get results. So I won't share with you the results. I shared that at the luncheon with the group there, but when we get the summer school update a little later in our board meeting, you'll hear a little bit about those results. I also want to share that we have begun a partnership with Chevron, who purchased Noble Energy here in Colorado, and their representative who works with schools had reached out and met with Julie Hill from the Success Foundation and Teresa Myers, Chief of Communications, and me. And initially, she reached out in the first meeting several months ago, just wanting to begin a relationship and understand our district and our schools a little bit more. By the third meeting, she was offering us some funding and said, you know, we will let you determine how to spend it. We want it to be in the STEM areas that you spend these dollars. You know, she made a point to say we don't purchase school buses and billboards, but we do fund, you know, worthwhile projects and programs in the STEM area. Initially, we were advised that we would probably receive about $40,000 annually, and we are pretty excited about that. Any additional resources is always welcome. We had the opportunity to share with her about our new Toynton Academy of Pre-Engineering and our work we're doing with Project Lead the Way out there, the curriculum. Chevron has a relationship with Project Lead the Way. Chevron, she and her colleagues, as she went back to them, were very excited to hear that we're actually implementing a pre-engineering academy. And she came back with a gift of $100,000 for the Toynton Pre-Engineering Academy from Chevron. And was clear in her note for us not to expect this every year. But these will be the seed dollars that will help us to really do the deep training of staff that we need to do to get staff ready to teach in a pre-engineering curriculum, and to really embed that Project Lead the Way content in all across the contents from preschool through 8th grade. So pretty excited about the partnership, and really, you know, it's probably the easiest grant we've gotten. Julie Hill from the Success Foundation we'll funnel the money through them, but Julie and I are both in agreement it's probably the easiest money we've gotten. And then I'll just say that super excited and looking forward to our Innovation 2030 launch this Wednesday evening, where we'll bring together about 200 staff and community members and students and really begin that work of those action teams behind Innovation 2030. So I just can't say enough about how important it is that you have a strategic plan. I'll just remind you that the reason we were able to so quickly complete our application to receive our federal funding and already have those dollars here in the district is because of the work we've done with strategic planning. We've been very, very strategic around our 4 big goal areas. We knew what the next big chunks that were needed here in the district in order to move student achievement to the next level. And because of our ESSER dollars, we will be able to do that work here over the next 3 years. And so excited to bring that group together on Wednesday evening and share with them what pieces have already been funded because of ESSER, and then identify the pieces that still, you know, the rest of the plans that need to be written out over the next really decade. So looking forward to that and hope to see you all there.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch. We now need to approve the agenda for tonight, so we'll need a motion.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley Evans School District 6 approves the agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you both. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, Ms. Richards, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. We also need to approve our consent agenda, and for those of you who don't watch all the time, our consent agenda are things we have agreed beforehand don't need any discussion from us to pass them. And so, but we do need a motion for our consent agenda.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley Evans School District 6 approves items as presented on the consent agenda and authorizes the officers to sign any and all contracts.
Second.
Thank you both. Any discussion on our consent agenda? Seeing none, Ms. Richards, will you give us a vote, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Ms. Mueller?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. We're now to our Greeley Education Association Starfish Award, and so I'd like to invite our GEA President, Ms. Andy Lee, to come to the podium to present the Starfish Award.
Good evening. It is my honor to recognize Emily Furlan and her intensive autism program at Heath as our Starfish Award winner. She is absolutely amazing. I was able to be in her classroom twice, and the first time I got to teach what a leader was. And we had a vocabulary lesson covering presidents, voting, elections, some pretty heavy-duty government and studies and social studies curriculum. And then we decided a leader really boils down to two things: help others and be nice. The next time that we were here, we got to annotate some text. And I don't know if you've ever had the privilege of being in an intensive autism class, but it is absolutely amazing. And truly what makes Emily so special, and everybody that works with Emily's program so special, is the absolute belief that any child can access our curriculum with enough scaffolding and enough modifications to meet their learning needs. So I had a young man who was very dedicated on being able to just pick out the pictures, and that wasn't satisfactory for Emily or her curriculum. And so we actually annotated text together. And his job was to choose the picture. My job was to create the triangle so that he could go from the marker, choosing the correct marker, whether it was green, blue, etc., for whether it was a subject or a verb or an action or whatnot. And my job was to create the triangle so he could get the word. He knew he needed the word, but he had some difficulty trying to get that motor skill from the picture to the word. And so we just had to figure it out. But it is an absolute joy watching the learning happen. And if anyone has any doubt that all children are learning in District 6, they really need to, when we're allowed to go back into buildings to visit, they need to come visit Emily's classroom because some amazing learning is happening. So Emily, you definitely save each one, and I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I don't know if you have any comments for Emily, but before we ran away, I thought I'd ask.
I bet we do. Ms. Solis.
No questions, but just thank you for all the work that you do, the example that you set. You know, being a school board member, I've learned so much about what our teachers do. And just when I think that they couldn't do more, you guys do. And so just thank you every day for the stuff that you do and the stuff that you think about on the weekends when you're supposed to be off. And I know you keep thinking about it because I know that's how important our kids are to you. And just know that we recognize that, we see you, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Emily, I'll just echo those comments and say thank you. I mean, we do believe that all means all, and we are glad to recognize someone who is helping our children, all of our children, achieve and be successful in the system. So thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for all your work on behalf of our students.
Thank you very much.
Our next item on our agenda is Innovation 2030 Update, Safety and Security. And so this is a presentation, and Dr. Pilch, I will give it to you.
Thank you so much, President Matthews. So it is America's Safe Schools Week, October 17th through the 23rd. So we timed the update from Mr. Henson and Mr. Gates to coincide with the Safe Schools Week and to provide you with an update on some of the most recent actions we've taken around school safety. I think the presentation will answer some of the questions you've had in the last few weeks, and I'm pleased to welcome to the podium Chief of Safety and Security, Mr. John Gates, and Assistant Superintendent of Support Services, Mr. Ken Henson.
Thank you. Dr. Pilch, you stole my first line, so I'm going to reiterate it if that's okay. As Dr. Pilch indicated, next week is Safe Schools Week nationally. And in recognition of that, we thought it was a timely occasion to give you some updates about not only school safety programs, but also some infrastructure. And Ken Henson and I are pleased to do that this evening. I think you're aware of the school safety and security vulnerability assessments that we do each year. These are starting a little bit later this year for a reason I'll get to shortly. We just finished some school safe training relative to a grant and try to build in a little time between those two assessments because they can be a bit taxing to our schools. These assessments are a component of the Safe Schools Act. There's about 15 items that persons in my capacity need to check at each school each year to be sure we're in compliance with the Safe Schools Act. Kind of tinker with that a little bit each year based on the needs of our district, but we have a 92-point checklist currently that we'll delve into 92 points related to either the school, the building itself, policies, procedures, and the appropriate training and awareness. As indicated, they're commencing this week rather than about 3 weeks ago this year because of the other training, which is the school safe radio training. I think you recall perhaps back in 2019, prior to COVID, the district was a recipient of a $1.5 million grant, which came from the State Department of Homeland Security. And we just completed the school safe radio training at each school. The grant included radios, included towers at each school, which you probably won't be visually aware of unless you're looking for them. Most of that was built into the infrastructure. But the idea behind this grant and the training is that it'll provide communications interoperability between our schools and first responders directly in the event of a school crisis. And that is done via a bridge that is completed right in the dispatch center that serves all of Well County. And it's a mechanism that either Mr. Brown or myself can set in place, and really I think is a great safeguard for school safety as we move forward in that direction. Safe to Tell continues to be a really valuable resource to us. In a non-COVID year, we're experiencing about 500 tips per year. This year appears to be on track, although it's quite early. But while many of these tips are minor in scope and probably don't meet the definition of why Safe to Tell was first started, the fact is that we do get tips relative to potential for school violence and or suicidal ideology. So we consider Safe to Tell a really valuable resource. We get a lot of them. We're a large district. Between my office and the police, we follow up on each and every one, and then we provide a dispo to the state. So I'm going to turn it over to Kent, but I will stick around in the event you'd have any questions.
Okay, my part here is obviously with the bond issue, and I'm also going to talk about MLO in terms of school safety. So as you know, just in when the bond was passed, that really in every school was set to receive these things: secure main entry vestibules, new door hardware, and also we're doing fire panel replacement as we go, because in some of our new builds for sure and our places for additions, we have to bring those up to code. And then also we're using bond money for security cameras in our new builds. So secure vestibules really began the summer of 2020. I know you've been at this site and you've seen these two schools. But the main focus of our vestibules is to have during the school hours a locked front entry, of which you need to do a voice activation and camera entry at the outside of the school. If the office allows you into the vestibule, you wait there, and then they determine whether or not you need to get into the office, or are you just waiting for a child or whatever. The remaining of the building is locked. You can see that in some of the pictures I have coming up. These are the 4 schools that we completed this summer. So Bella Romero 4-8, Hyman, Winograd, and Dos Rios. Those all received their secure vestibules and door hardware and other upgrades this summer. And so this is kind of, I just took some pictures. Each one is a little bit different, but on the left there, you can see that is a secure entry from the outside. We use school guard glass for our safety glass, which a lot of school districts just use a film on the outside. We invest in the glass in these aluminum storefronts. The picture in the middle is the locked office that would go into the office. So if you're in the vestibule, that's what the office would look like. You have to buzz in there, or if you're an employee, you can use your access code to get in there. And then the picture on the right just shows kind of the secure office. That would be the door to get from the office into the school. This is Dos Rios, a little different setup. They all kind of look similar on the outside, but here at this angle on the inside, you can see to the right, there's that new door, which is secure into the building. Through the middle, through the glass, you can see the door entry from the vestibule into the office. That is secure. And then the vestibule there on your left, which would be where a parent would wait to determine, what kind of help they need, but they cannot access the building. So those doors are also secure into the building. And then this is Hyman, similar view. You get on the outside, they all look similar. On the inside, a little bit different configuration, but the general same function of that. And then here is Winograd. So all in all right now, in terms of secure vestibules, we have 6 of those complete. And that's not to say our other schools that we haven't gotten to yet, we still have iPhones on the outside and those doors remain locked. But we'll be installing this system in 5 more schools next summer. So we still have 2 full summers to go for our vestibules. Door hardware upgrades, this looks innocent enough, but really the picture on the left, that is a door handle on the inside of a classroom. And as you can see, there's a button there that can lock a door. So and also that door is ADA compliant because it has a handle. In, I don't know how many thousands of doors we have in the district, in order to lock the door, the only way to do it was for a teacher to go outside in the hallway with a key and lock it. And so in a case of emergency, I was a principal, I was a teacher, I was in lockdown drills. In a time of emergency, that's a lot to ask to get a key, to go to the outside to do that. So now with the door shut, all rooms can be locked with the push of a button. And then fire panel upgrades. A lot of our fire panels are 50 years old, which have old wiring. They're falling apart. We have a lot of maintenance calls on them. And so it's really time to replace them. So we've started a process of doing that, beginning with our new constructions. And also as you're building fire panels, ours are hooked up with phone lines. And now we're going to more radio frequency. Phone lines are no longer up to code. And so our phone lines, or our fire panels, are now attached with radio frequencies, which means that the communication between them can be quicker, they're easier to read, and they can be monitored remotely. So right now, if we have a fire panel that goes off for no reason, we have to send people there to figure out and do a fix. With these, we'll be able to read, web-based, we'll be able to read from a central location and make sure we determine whether it's a drill or live and everybody's been communicated. And also, the big thing that's changed in the code is that we're required to have voice activation for evacuation, voice evacuation. So all these new panels will have that. And then security cameras, this has been a combination of bond and MLO. So if you look at this list carefully, you'll see in the first bullet, we have through the bond, those are our major projects that we have underway right now. Security cameras in those buildings will be provided through the bond. In the last 3 years, since the bond passed, with the second bullet, we have put in security cameras, or in the process of completing putting in security cameras at those schools. Now you'll see Greeley West is on there twice. We had them in the current building. We're putting them in the new. We will take them out of the current building because they're still good before demolition. And we'll look forward to using them someplace else. And then summer of '22, those will be MLO cameras in the summer of 2023. So I don't know if you're counting, but by the end of summer 2023, I believe if you count all those buildings, we're kind of at near 27. And so we'll have those complete with security cameras. And then last, internet safety. This is new to our district. And in eWeek, you got a pamphlet on this week that has some little videos in it that you probably looked at. But GoGuardian was selected as an all-in-one provider for online safety. So really with this device, this will allow us to do, will allow a teacher to do, is that if we're in an online environment, like with the Online Academy, if for some reason we have to go back to virtual, that a teacher can set up their classroom in that respect and then monitor student activities. So, they can tell if I, for example, am looking up Jeep parts when I should be reading this article on history or whatever, teacher will be able to see that and then redirect me back into class. There's also a filtering mechanism in this that can be used by the teacher and by the district, and also a threat analysis so that it can monitor sites that students are looking at. If we see that maybe somebody's in trouble, that can be reported out of that. And there is also a parent portal availability with this product. A lot of the products that were looked at are singular in nature, is they provide filtering, period. With this GoGuardian, this was looked at by our ETAC committee and other teachers and principals and went through an approval process where they looked at, I think, 3 of these systems, and this is the one that was decided on. So really, we're able to use the Online Academy to help set some of the standards in use on this for the rest of the district. And also, I should say, if I'm just teaching in a class, I don't have to be virtual, but I could give kids an online assignment while I'm face-to-face. As a teacher, I could also monitor that in the classroom. So this is new. In the pamphlet that I gave you, we do have training set up for teachers and principals coming out through this fall. Are there any questions that you have for either John or I?
I bet we have a few. So Ms. Mueller.
So I had just a couple of questions. I totally understand the door locking mechanism, especially if there's an active shooter situation. What are some possible drawbacks to students being able to lock their teachers out of their classroom? Is that a problem or a concern?
The other picture shows that there's a key lock on the outside.
Okay.
And in our new builds, we're also putting card access on the outside of classrooms.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then I have one other question. In terms of the GoGuardian for the internet safety, I know you were explaining that's true for online content and like their Chromebooks. What do we do to stop cell phone use in the classroom? Is that by policy, or is this also prohibiting them from accessing things they shouldn't on their cell phones?
This will, if they're on a cell phone and on the internet, I believe we'll be able to track that.
Okay.
Because it'll be based on the internet.
Okay.
But if they're on their cell phone doing something different, that's a different story.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Solis.
So it's not really a question, but 50 years old, It's just one of those moments, again, that we need to make sure and thank our voters. The MLO, the bond has just really opened up some things that needed to be replaced for years and updated and up to code. And just thank you again to our voters for doing this. And thank you for being so diligent in this process. I know it's not, we get all the money at once and we do all the work. You really have to sit down and plan this stuff. And so I just really commend you, Kent, on the work that you've done. And John, thanks for always making us safe and making sure that we do that, critical list of, do we have everything in place? Our kids, safety and health are top priority for us as a board. And you two gentlemen have really helped us continue to do that work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Talley.
Yeah, thank you guys for your work. And my first question, I have a few questions. First one is for Mr. Gates. What could you tell us kind of the process, what happens when a safe to tell report comes in, who's notified and all of that?
Certainly will. The safe to tell tip comes to me, all of them, as well as Steve Brown. The ones that emanate in Greeley go to the cadre of Greeley police SROs. The ones that emanate out of Evans goes to the Evans SRO. And then I see it, we communicate sometimes immediately, sometime after some delay with the police. If it requires an after-hours police response, which frankly, most of our safe-to-tells are after school hours, and then the police, usually it requires making a home visit, and then they report back to me, and either the police department dispatcher or myself will dispo that case to the state. And in some instances, there needs to be follow-up done at the school, so that I would be the liaison to then report to the principal. I also didn't mention those tips will go to the applicable building principal as well. So they're pretty widely disseminated. If it is a tip that is a stage 3 as designated by the state, I get a phone call as well. So in the event I wouldn't be near my email, which would tend to happen at maybe 2, 3 in the morning, they would call, and then they would direct me directly to the tip that came in. So those are rare, but they do happen, especially in an instance of obviously the more pressing issues I alluded to, like a potential act of school violence or suicidal ideologies are pretty important. They'd be followed up on right away.
Okay, thank you. And then
I
for
can
the,
answer. Also, as a former principal, I would say that got those smart, safe to tell messages is we treated everyone that it's important and that it's urgent. And so quite often it would be, we need to talk to this student now. And so either assistant principal or counselor or whatever, just to get to the bottom of it. And sometimes they were not valid. They were maybe even pranks, but a lot of times there's something there. Underneath that, just once you start working with the student, get them talking, you find out that indeed someone's in crisis. So I think, everybody, you do get the messages for sure. They are widespread and they're taken very seriously.
thank you. And then for the beacon system, or Go Guardian, sorry, when those reports come in, I guess my first question is, will we get notified, or will you all get notified if they are at home on their own network and not on a school network?
That I'm not sure of. I'm going to have to get back with you from our IT director.
If they are on their district email,
Yeah.
we will be notified. So it works through our Google system.
Okay. So then who
But
does,
if they're at home on their own,
They're on a personal email, on their
Personal account,
personal
yeah.
internet, we're not going to have notice of that.
okay, awesome. And if they are, say they're on their Google school email and they are searching something that has to do with suicide ideation, does that come to you, or does that go to Mr. Gates, or who gets notified of that stuff?
you know that?
The answer is, I don't think we know yet. It's the program's really in its infancy, but that is a question that we've asked is for, again, after hours events. What is the criteria for notification of district personnel, and then how does that happen? I know Tony Check's working on that.
But
But
this software was just purchased.
Right.
Yes.
And we've done one initial training on it with district administrators, but as Ms. Solis says, as a result of our mill levy override dollars, we're in that phase of the dollars where we now have the dollars to purchase this system. There will be an ongoing cost for it. But, you know, we did a bid process, went out and researched the different systems that are available. There's several. You mentioned one a moment ago that you probably are familiar with in another school district. So we're looking forward to being able to fully operationalize it and to utilize the data that comes from it. They make a lot of promises around the numbers of incidences they're able to intervene with, particularly suicidal and homicidal ideation.
Perfect, and thank you all so much. And my final question is around child exploitation. Does that automatically go to the child abuse department at the state, or does it have to funnel through the district to then go to the police to then go down there?
If it comes in and it's that clear that it's a potential exploitation, it'll be sent to us and then the exploitation authorities as well.
Awesome.
The very few that I've seen have been dual reported, so I have reason to believe the system works pretty well.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Hafley.
I'll try not to be redundant. Again, I'd like to thank our MLO and our bond voters for everything they've done. And I need to compliment and thank both of you for the incredible efforts you've made on behalf of our students and staff. You and your staff should be very, very proud. I may be asking the wrong people, but when it comes to things like cybersecurity and ransomware, is that you or is that Mr. Check that deals with that?
We've hired in this last year a cybersecurity engineer. So we have somebody in IT that is working with cybersecurity and ransomware and things like that to help protect our district.
Okay, thank you.
That individual reports to Mr. Check.
Yep.
Okay.
That Mr. Henson is referencing. And just again, kind of org chart, Mr. Check reports to Mr. Henson. But we know that's an area of significant concern for large organizations. We also work with our insurance carrier and of course legal counsel to help to make sure we have the pieces in place that we should around protecting our systems that are in place.
Thank you.
And I think that's all the questions that we have for you both. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the report. And again, as a parent, just thank you for the work that you do. And if kids aren't safe, then there's nothing else that we can do that is important. So thank you for the work that you're doing. It's critical for this district.
Thank you.
Our next item of business are some revisions to our G personnel policies. And this is an action item that will require a motion.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley Evans School District 6 approves the revisions to G personnel policies as presented.
Second.
Thank you both. Well, Dr. Pilch, I don't know if there's anything you need to say about these. Anybody who watches routinely knows that we are constantly updating a policy or two every meeting, and it looked to me like maybe the most significant part of these policies were, recognition of how far flip-flops have come in the last decade. Other than that, it looked like some linguistics. And so any other comments you have on this?
I'll just say that I don't think any of these were the result of changes in statute. They're all a result of recommendations from our Colorado School Boards Association.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, Ms. Richards, will you give us a vote, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. Our next item is Innovation 2030 Update, Student Learning and Achievement, Summer School and Internships. And I've lost my internet connection, but I'm pretty sure this one is not an action item, correct?
No, it's just information.
All right, Dr. Pilch, I'll give it to you then.
Thank you, President Matthews. This is one of our first of many to come Innovation 2030 updates. So you see the work has already begun in our new strategic plan. We have Mr. Wes Tuttle, Assistant Superintendent of Elementary and K-8 schools, Mr. Anthony Osmus would have typically been here tonight representing secondary, but he's actually out doing some dad duties this evening. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Tuttle to update you and share some good news with you.
Good evening, President Matthews, board members, Dr. Pilch. It is a privilege to be able to be here on behalf of Anthony and myself to be able to share with you the updates on our summer school as well as our internship experiences. As you know, our work is grounded in our District 6 mission and vision of engaging all of our students in a personalized, well-rounded, and excellent education, preparing students to be college and career ready. We have a lot of values, and I would just highlight 3 of them that this summer school experience really hit on. One is our students come first. The second one, we know every child can achieve, and we promote access, opportunity, and choice for our students. As you know, within the Innovation 2030 that Dr. Pilch has alluded to, we have 4 goals. And this obviously aligns to student learning and achievement. Within that, we have the goal of providing a personalized learning experience so all students graduate on time and are college and career ready. We have several outcomes, and you can see those listed here. Those outcomes include graduating on time, as well as supporting students meeting state expectations on state assessments in ELA and math, all of which were supported by our summer school experiences. So we had our objective of how to align our resources to meet grade level expectations and graduation requirements. So within that, we implemented a robust summer school experience programming, and in addition to that, we had a secondary goal of addressing learning gaps due to COVID disruptions. Our summer school programming was entirely funded this year through ESSER dollars. Let me start out by talking a little bit about the elementary program and what that entailed. We held summer school for 16 of our sites, some of which had to be served at neighboring sites due to construction that was going on. We had 2,215 students participate in this full-day program that lasted 5 weeks in the month of June. Then in July, we had 5 sites host a Jumpstart program for incoming kindergarten students. While we didn't have the breadth of enrichment that we had a couple of years ago when we offered the Summer Adventures program, this year we did offer Camp Invention, and it was hosted at Prairie Heights and led by several staff members from Hyman. With COVID, we limited many field trips during the school year last year. As we've learned more about how to keep our students in safe manners, we've included many field trips or excursions during our summer school opportunities. Some of those on the screen include the Museum of Nature and Science, the Weld County Airport, the Butterfly Pavilion, the Poudre Learning Center, the Terry Bison Ranch, and many other great excursions for our students. One way we assessed the effectiveness of our elementary summer school program was to complete pre- and post-assessments in both English language arts and in mathematics. You'll see the gains here across all grade levels for each content area. A second body of evidence that we looked at was Dibbles. Typically, nationally speaking, there's a drop every single summer for our students. And so we looked at that and we said, can we do, what's the impact of our students in summer school? What you see here is the drop in the composite score from the end of the year last year to this fall for current first, second, and third grade students. The red bar shows the average drop for students that did not attend summer school, and the blue bar is the drop for students that attended summer school, much less. As we think about middle school now, this summer we had over 800 middle school students from our traditional and our K-8 middle schools attend an intensive academic program focusing on our cores: math, science, language arts, and social studies. However, we also offered several electives and athletic opportunities during summer school to help recover much of what was lost during the previous year due to COVID. We also focused on the social well-being of the students and their belonging.
Summer school at the middle level was also a full-day program for the 5 weeks in the month of June. Fifth grade students also had the opportunity to attend transition programs. Middle school held a transition day or took advantage of the rolling start to help students transition into the year with only half the students in the building at a time. High school. Students in high school level were offered intensive credit recovery programs for all grade levels that allowed students to extend their semester to complete missing work or retake courses that they needed to stay on track to graduate. We had over 1,000 students take advantage of summer school led by certified high school teachers. Using the ESSER dollars to pay teachers at their per diem rate allowed us to employ enough teachers to keep students working all summer long. We also offered accelerated geometry for both current freshmen and even some 8th graders from our middle schools and K-8s. In July, we held AP and IB boot camps as well as the Rising Freshman Transition programs. We were not able to offer these programs during the summer of 2020 due to COVID, but they were very well attended this summer. Some of the data there. As previously mentioned, over 1,000 students either finished the semester or took summer coursework for credit. 279 credits were earned from all these high school students in grades 9 through 12. The impact was great. This intensive work helped many students get back on track. There's still much work to be done getting all students back on track, but this past summer was a huge success. This summer, District 6 also offered the Career Explore Internship Program, which provides rising seniors 150 to 180 hours of paid internship in their chosen pathway. We are fortunate to have 29 business and community partners supporting the learning of our students through the on-the-job training so that students are further prepared and excited to pursue that career pathway. Of the 88 partnerships, 46 were external, 24 were grant funded, and 18 were internal to District 6. Here's the 29 business partners that supported the learning of our students through the Career Explore Internship Program. And we are so appreciative of the partnerships we have within our community. Next steps. As we continue our work into the Innovation 2030, we'll be launching our before and after school programming, as well as our Saturday programming to support our students in graduating on time. We will analyze both academic and perception data collected as we make plans to replicate this summer program for summer of 2022. In addition, we'll continue to develop and partner with area businesses to provide additional internship and apprenticeship opportunities, as well as increasing the number of students involved in these programs. Thank you so much for allowing us to update you and share this information with you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Tuttle. I imagine we'll have some questions heading your way. And I think first was Mr. Talley.
Thank you so much. And it makes me so happy when I see all the internship and apprenticeship stuff that's happening in our district. We really are, Northern Colorado, we really are the leaders in internships for high school students. And I again, thank you to the voters with the MLO to be able to put some positions that really did that community work and really started that foundation, built that foundation of relationships in the community. So I have to say thank you for telling us about this and for bringing it back to our attention and for grounding us back into work that we are also passionate about, and also for letting us know that things are increasing in terms of relationships for internships and apprenticeships. So a lot of other great things on there, but I just want to target that part and just say I'm super appreciative of everyone that works so hard on that.
And along those lines, I'll recognize Nelson Rodriguez is our person. So if businesses want to connect with us, Nelson would be happy to reach out to you. So thank you for recognizing that. Right?
Ms. Solis?
So this is exciting work. And it really does go back to the work that we did as a board and, as an administration of our strategic plan, and really setting that tone of what needs to be in place to make sure that we are making sure kids are career and college ready. And what I love about this plan is that you as staff, when something comes up like COVID, you guys are able to pivot, but still fall within that strategic plan. Everything has a way that it's supposed to go within the strategic plan. So it just seems like almost seamless, even though it's a huge pivot. But you guys just make it look like you just had this all planned ahead of time. And so just thank you all for your work on this. There was some great catch-up work done over the summer. And I know this is definitely a benefit for our kids. And I look forward to, the district doing more programs like this over the summer. I'd love to see that. The work that you guys do to make sure that our kids are graduating on time was a big thing when I first got on the board. Graduation rates, and that's a lot of how they measure a community. I don't think a lot of people understand that when new businesses come into a community, when families want to move to a community, one of the first places that they look is the school district. And we've done such huge work in mending relationships, building partnerships, and that is all, due to this board, this staff, Dr. Pilch. Everyone has worked so hard over this past 8 years to make sure that we are moving in the right direction and that we're a community where businesses want to start and families want to move, and our district is where they want to go to school. I know, Dr. Pilch, you have been tasked numerous times on how did you guys do that in your district? How did you turn things around? How did you get all those schools off watch? And a lot of that is the strategic plan that we all put in place and we all follow and abide by. So thank you to you and your staff and everybody that worked over the summer, just making sure that kids are caught up and where they need to be. So thanks, Wes.
Ms. Mueller.
So I do want to thank Mr. Rodriguez and his staff. It is pretty impactful for students to have an internship over the summer and then to see them years later, which is something that I have had the opportunity to do, and have them at UNC, getting their degree and talk still about how impactful that summer internship program was. So that is just an amazing program. I invite businesses to, put your money where your mouth is, that if you invest in Greeley and Evans, you invest in our kids and you offer those internship programs. I did want to ask a question about the summer school space, and if you felt that, I know that, it was targeting kids that really did need to have that extra time and that extra ability to perform in the classroom. Do you feel that there was even the ability that there was more interest maybe than we had capacity, that the interest has grown or that the momentum would continue to grow into future summers?
We were able to serve the students that we targeted. So there wasn't necessarily that. The piece that was missing this year was that enrichment component. If you think back to summer adventures or those types of things, we didn't have those types of experiences. But when we invited the students, if you remember earlier, we were targeting about 50% of our students. And so we had capacity for that. So it wasn't a space limitation, it was more a matter of getting the kids to commit to being there. Many of them had conflicts.
Sure.
With summer programming and that kind of stuff. But it is growing year after year after year. So that's the exciting part. Our community is responding to it very well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Ms. Solis?
Sorry, I had one more question. So when it came to the summer programs, we know that transportation is a big challenge for a lot of our families. How did you accommodate that?
So we ran bus routes to all of our neighborhoods for the summer. And in fact, when schools were using other facilities, so for instance, Chapel was going over to Centennial, we created a shuttle bus that transported kids from Chapel over to Centennial because Chapel wasn't able to meet due to construction. So transportation was very much a part of this to create access. Yep.
Mr. Donald, I have just a few questions. You were going through it very quickly, and you may have said this, and I just was behind in my processing, which is often the case. But I'd love to zero in and spend a little time on slide 13 and the change from pre to post assessments. And can you tell us, those just seem like remarkable numbers when I look at those percentage jumps, increases. And can you tell us a little bit about a little bit more about how that was achieved, when pre was and when post was, and
Yep.
tell me a little bit more about the assessments.
Yeah, so we offered the pre-assessments at the beginning of the summer school experience. And we actually did some of it in smaller units, so it wasn't necessarily the 5-week unit, it was the smaller units. And we looked at the growth that the kids were making on those assessments. The assessments were designed specifically around the high priority standards that we really needed to ensure kids mastered going into the next grade level. So it was very targeted content that they created those assessments around. So we were really measuring, are they mastering the critical concepts for kids going into that next grade level? And what you see there is just the growth from the average score at the beginning pre-assessment to the average score at the post-assessment.
Yeah, again, those are some remarkable jumps.
Yeah.
I mean, 20, looks like an average of about 20%. I mean, if you look at all those numbers, I can't average them all in my head that quickly, but yeah, that's pretty remarkable and speaks volumes to what was achieved this summer.
Yep.
So, I don't see any other questions, and I don't have any. Dr. Phelps, did you have?
Thank you, President Matthews. I want to say, and I said this last Wednesday when I spoke about these results, we got these results because our teachers were willing to come back and teach summer school. And after the year they had last year, and they were tired. There's no question they were tired. And yet many of them came back and taught school every single day, all day long, Monday through Thursday, in order to move students. And a huge kudos to our teaching cadre here in District 6. And, as Mr. Tuttle says, it was very targeted instruction. So we had our best and our brightest in the classroom, those folks who really know how to do this and how to move students. And it just shows you what happens when you are able to bring teachers in every day, all day, with students and pay them their daily rate. Just really excited about these results. We will continue to debrief this work and determine, what the program looks like for next summer as well. But we do have the continued ESSER dollars, and we've already plugged them into the budget to be able to offer a robust summer program again.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch, and thank you, Mr. Tuttle. And again, that's a great reminder. Thank you to our teachers. This pandemic has impacted different professions differently, and for some, it's produced a lot of uncertainty, and for our teachers, it has produced nonstop work, and they have not stopped working since the beginning of March and changing what they're doing, and then teaching summer school and catching kids up, and they're still doing that now. So I have the greatest admiration and appreciation for the teachers in this district. Our next item on our agenda is the consideration of District Unified Improvement Plan, and this is an action item that will need a motion.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley Evans School District 6 approves the District Unified Improvement Plan as presented.
Second.
Thank you both. Well, before we begin our discussion, Dr. Pilch, I'll give it to you and let you tell us what this Unified Improvement Plan is going to be.
Thank you, President Matthews. And as you all know, you received these plans in your weekly memo. So this isn't your first time to hear them or to hear about them or to see them. Dr. Dattery, Assistant Superintendent of Academic Achievement, has come to the podium to walk you through what you're actually considering here.
Thank you, Superintendent Pilch, President Matthews, and members of the board. It is my pleasure to share with you the work of the District Unified Improvement Plan, that's UIP. So there's a few acronyms. I will say them as I talk you through this. But just to quickly orient you to the process of the development of the UIP, we do start this work really when we begin getting our end of year data. That is in May of every year, and then we take that development process through the month of September. Now this year, that's a little different timeline than what we've had in the past. In the past, we've had really through the better part of a school year, but they have upped that timeline at the Colorado Department of Education to where we are submitting our UIPs district-wide in mid-October. So it does cause that development process to be a little more compressed in terms of those months, but it is absolutely doable, and we have been able to prepare this plan with our academic achievement team, looking at the work of the schools across the district, and working in consultation with our district accountability committee. In doing this work, priority performance challenges were reviewed, along with really thinking about what are the root causes that underlie just that next step of work. And then we develop action steps for the year that are in alignment with not only the work that's going to happen that's really outlined in a district unified improvement plan, but it is tightly aligned to the work of our strategic plan. And this is really just lifting out a part of this and really going deep and outlining what are those action steps, the benchmark measures that we will use, and really lifting out just a couple of things that are in alignment to the work of the schools as well. So as I already mentioned, we bring this to you this evening as an action item. We will then submit, and they go for public posting by this Friday, October 15th, and then we continue to implement this plan through the course of this school year. So as you were able to review the District Unified Improvement Plan, we outlined a priority performance challenge of really looking at English language arts, that's ELA, English language arts and math, academic achievement and growth, including English learners as well as special education students, is really focusing on the work that we need to continue with. And so really just the statement that underlies that is that during the 3 years prior to COVID, and when we analyzed our CMAS, our data, in both math and in English language arts, including our students who are identified as gifted and talented, we showed that students were making progress at all three levels, elementary, middle, and high school. This past year, however, there were declines in both English language arts and math due to learning interruptions with COVID. And especially notable, however, in our data is the percent of increase of English learner students on their WIDA access on-track data. So that is the assessment that's given around English language proficiency. We noticed some notable percent increase of students who are continuing to be on track within that data. We also noticed last year an increase of graduation rates and a decrease of dropout rates. So while some of that data continues to trend in the right direction, there were some interruptions with learning this last year, as we know. And so academic achievement and growth continues to be our focus as we recover from learning loss experience through COVID. So two ways that we're really going to just focus our attention on as a district, and what you're really seeing, this is really the work that's happening in our schools, is first and foremost that quality tier 1 instruction, and just utilizing the aligned resources effectively with instructional strategies that are really going to move student learning and achievement. And it allows all of our students, including students who are English learners or students with disabilities, to ensure that they're accessing grade level content. So there are several actions that we're taking across the district to make sure that that is happening. And those include, and certainly are not all of them, but just kind of at a high level, really looking at the K-12 work of West Ed. We have been able to contract with them for our students, really focusing on the work with our students who are English learners. And this year we expanded that. Well, prior years we expanded it to our special education students. We're continuing that work in both of those two areas. And we've expanded the focus and just that intentionality with them, with the students who, with our work with English language arts at the secondary level. And then the second is really continuing with the work around K-12 co-teaching support and implementation. Schools are doing that in varying ways and making that work for the needs of their students and where their teachers are in that work. And so continuing to support them in ways that make sense is really an action step and a focus. And then specifically, as we mentioned, it's literacy and math, right? So there are some very intentional things that we're doing in both of those areas. First, it's really about pouring that support and professional learning support specifically into literacy leads, and we call them the secondary powerful literacy leads. And so bringing them together a couple of times, several times really throughout the year, monthly, and really supporting them through literacy development is one focus for the middle school and high school teachers. And then a second is the elementary literacy adoption work that we are going to begin. In fact, this month, we will begin that process and supporting the work of really providing new resources, both reading as well as writing resources for teachers through an in-depth process. And then something that also came out of the work with our district accountability committee is really thinking about how can we wrap community support around within our elementary schools and really support literacy across, whether it be with continuing to support with read specialists as well as reading core and our community support with that, and doing some additional work with book trust and bringing in volunteers to read with kids on a regular basis within that. So several different things in that area. And then very specifically in math, we know that we are in our second year of really supporting, again, our teachers, much like we are with literacy leads, our math leads at the secondary level, supporting them and kind of doing that trainer of trainers. And as teachers know the work not only of math, but then of the building and of their community of students, how can they really make sure that students are getting what they need at each building? And then elementary math implementation, we adopted that. Thank you again, voters. Thank you to you, the board. While there's a lot going on in schools, I think by and large, many of our teachers are just grateful to be able to have a supportive resource that helps them to do the right work with students at a young age in the area of math. So continuing to support them is critical. And that is outlined. So then the second major improvement strategy is really this full implementation of a multi-tiered system of support. And so what we know what that means is that there are 5 main components to make sure that the child is supported holistically in the classroom and in the school environment every day. So staff are really utilizing this MTSS system to provide supports for students in all 3 tiers, that tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, wherever students are needing support as appropriate for both academic as well as behavior support. So there are several things that are happening, and I will just name a few of these from really intentional career and college readiness work that is happening at that middle and high school very intentionally. We'll continue that work in future years into the elementaries as well. Again, thank you to the support that we've been able to provide to our teachers with transitioning from a different platform into EduClimber, and really being able to provide plans of support within EduClimber for MTSS. The work of our district leadership team has really helped to provide some direction and supports at the building level. There's after-school programming that really provides that additional academic support that some identified students will need, and so that continues through both our MLO dollars as well as our 21st century. So we're able to provide that, and then really thinking about intentionally from an MTSS perspective around the social emotional learning curriculum and year 2 implementation, last year being during that year of COVID, it being very essential, and then certainly this year being back in brick and mortar on a more consistent basis and being able to really implement that curriculum the way it's meant to be has been helpful. Continued coordination really of our family and student support team, and that's made up, those are our social workers, counselors, as well as behavior and support technician folks. And I would say in addition to that, our North Range behavior therapists that just really comprise that entire system of support around behaviors and social emotional supports. And the last 3 are really, the next 2 are around interventions, both the specific elementary reading interventions that we have put into place to really target and support our youngest of students in particular to make sure that they are reading. And then when we think about tier 2 interventions of read and math 180, very specifically implementing those resources in the schools to make sure that students are getting what they need academically in those areas. And last but certainly not least is the work of school equity teams, the continued training and support that they're providing, because all does mean all. And when we say that, that means looking at the whole child and thinking about how can we really make sure that students have equitable and consistent access into grade level curriculum, and how are we as adults making sure that that happens every day. So the work that they're doing in this area has just been critical. They've been thriving with this work and really tailoring it to the building focus in each of those buildings. And so from a district perspective, it's about how are we supporting our schools in all of these different areas so that they're successful with these. So that is in a nutshell, on a pretty big high level. There's implementation benchmarks that we monitor along the way that you saw outlined in the District Unified Improvement Plan to make sure that we are staying the course and providing success and ensuring that we're successful with those action steps as they're outlined. So I'll take any questions you may have or comments that you may have.
Well, thank you for the report. I'm sure we'll have a few questions coming in. I think first again is Mr. Talley.
Thank you for the intentional work around looking at the whole child. and looking at all factors of a child's life to ensure success. Could you go into detail a little bit about when you say that all of our students have access to grade level content, what you mean by that? Because one might say, well, yeah, they're in third grade, I expect them to be doing third grade work. What does the district mean when we say our students will have access to grade level content?
That's a great question. And oftentimes students have a lot of different supports. What can often happen too is that students might be either behind grade and not on that third grade level. And so one school of thought is that students need to be removed from the classroom and provided instruction at their level. And what we subscribe to, or conversely, right? What we subscribe to is we say that while students may need additional support to get them up to grade level, they do that within the classroom with their peers, having access to that grade level content. And then what are the scaffolds, right? Think about it as truly like a ladder. How do we help support kids to be able to access that grade level work while we fill gaps of learning that they may have along the way, and not removing them from the classroom to fill gaps before they can access that third grade, very specifically that third grade curriculum.
And if I may add, Dr. Dattery, we didn't just pick this approach
No.
because we liked it. There are years and years of research that indicate that having children in remedial courses pulled out of the regular classroom never catches children up. So the approach we use, and it's why the co-teaching model is so important, is to have children in the classroom at grade level with that expert at access in the classroom as well to also help catch that child up. I think some of you saw this work going on at Brentwood Middle School this past week. It's really remarkable work. And then there's also the opportunity at times for double dosing students. And what we mean by that is pre-teaching and oftentimes reteaching. Correct. to keep moving that student toward success in that on grade level content. And quite frankly, it is how we've gotten the results we've gotten over the last few years. When I first came to the district, we had a lot of students being pulled out of the regular classroom and being taught at a lower grade level than the grade level standard.
Then the last question, could you maybe go into a little bit of detail around what is MTSS and why is that so important?
MTSS stands for multi-tiered systems of support. So it's tiered in that the same support doesn't work for all students because they're going to need different things. All students need that universal, so that's that tier 1, multi-tiered. Some students might need a little bit more, as we kind of talked about a minute ago. They might need a little more to catch up or a little more to advance them further. And some kids need that tier 3 more intensive support, and it may be behavior or academics. It's a system, so it's not about it being just all one off, but it really coordinated efforts from a school staff and a district-wide staff to make sure that we intervene appropriately and consistently make sure students are staying on track and achieving at their potential. So it's not just one facet of just academics or just behavior, but it's multifaceted. It's layered, and like I mentioned, with different tiers of support. It is also about involving the family. It is not just about what we do at school, but it's about family supports and how are we engaging families and partnering with them to ensure students are successful at school.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Solis?
So when we first talked about blended learning coming to the district,
Yes.
I think of those conversations and then I look where we are now and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
You really just taken off with it to a level that you kind of plug it in everywhere to make sure that all kids are around their peers, but then yet kids that are ahead are able to move forward, kids that are behind can get extra help, and yet they're all still learning together, and sometimes kids helping each other.
Yep.
So I just really appreciate all the intentionality that's gone into this plan, which I know that's what you do, Stacy, always. But to see how you break it down and all the things that you plug into, again, it kind of falls into our strategic plan of this is the plan, this is how we're going to measure it, this is how we know we've achieved it.
Yep.
And so I just really appreciate you putting it in a way that we can all understand. So thank you for that. I know it's a lot of work, but I know that you really care about kids and moving them forward and making sure that they're ready for that next grade level and then on to graduation. I know your staff has worked really hard around this. And I know that we've talked about newer teachers and making sure that they have a mentor to kind of help them, because this is big work.
Yes.
And so can you kind of talk about how that partnership works to kind of maybe help a newer teacher that comes to our district?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot that teachers are taking on and bringing not only to the classroom as a new teacher and new ideas, but also how can we help them to learn and get on their feet as quickly as possible with these big initiatives and big kind of things that we're working on. And so that really happens in a couple of ways. I'd say first and foremost, it's about the days that we spend additional outside of just the traditional contract. New teachers have an additional 4 days. And what we've done in the last couple of years is to think about how can we utilize a few days up front. And then in fact, just today was that 4th day for teachers after they've already been with us for a little while, to bring them back in, help them, where are some of the gaps, where are some of the next steps of learning, and just to continue to shore them up, and so that they're a community unto themselves, really, kind of learning and leaning on each other. And so that's been valuable, is to kind of break that up a little bit. The second thing that we do to really help support our new teachers with this work, and just know that then those days really revolve around those big initiatives and the things that we have outlined in here that it's not new learning, it's the learning we've already been providing our teachers up to this point. And then the second thing really is, so you talked about the mentors. So new teachers being paired very intentionally with a building designated mentor at their site, if at all possible. There's a few times where a teacher might need to be paired with another teacher if they're in a more specific role that is not a role that they have at their building. But by and large, most of them are paired with a teacher at their building, and to really help and focus on them from anything from planning to answering questions about how do I fill out this form, to just feeling that success and having that mentor person to just bounce ideas off of. And so that is ongoing work. And then additionally, many of our schools have additional time that they've built in along the year and along the way to support their new teachers and to bring them together in, again, like I talked about that larger community, but in their own smaller school communities to support them as new teachers. And we hear more about how they're doing that and very intentional work to make sure that they are feeling successful and retaining them as new professionals in this environment, so that they feel successful. And in turn, if they feel successful, their kids will be successful. So those are really those 3 big nuggets of ways that we're really helping to support new teachers to be up on these things and more.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
President Matthews, I'll just add that as we worked through our last strategic plan, and a big piece out of that plan was the attracting and retaining quality staff. And then the work that we did through negotiations, those of you who were with us the last negotiations, you heard the need for us to support new teachers, especially teachers new to the profession or teachers new to District 6. And so as a piece of that, we really restructured our new teacher induction program and restructured our mentor program and offer a stipend to those mentors who are mentoring our new teachers, and meet annually with those mentors to train them and make sure they're ready to do the job they're being asked to do with those new teachers. So I just wanted to point out that that's work that came out of the last round of the strategic plan, and work that Dr. Dattery and her team have been able to implement with teacher feedback by listening to teachers telling us what it was they needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Just looking back at what you said about COVID and the interruption in learning that we've experienced, and you've given us a lot of action steps and a lot of things that we're doing. Which one are you watching most closely? Which one sort of holds the best hopes for catching up? Which one should we ask you about in a year from now when we're looking at this?
That's a great question, and I would say everything that is in the priority, excuse me, I'm losing my words, major improvement strategy 2 around multi-tiered systems of support. Everything that we have in that priority and action steps really supports the work in addition to the quality tier 1 instruction. So when we get that right, that is making sure that 80% or more of our students are achieving at that grade level and beyond. And when that's really the benchmark that Mr. Tuttle and Mr. Osmus and I talk about consistently, is how are we making sure that the supports we put in place, district level and at the school levels, helping our teachers to feel that success for themselves as educators, and in turn, again, making sure that they're doing what they need to do for their students to achieve those benchmarks. That's what we're watching, and that is Tier 1 instruction. So that is, it's why that kind of consistently remains, and we have seen some good strides and some good momentum. This year, we certainly were set back, but you saw earlier a summer school report saying this is how we're making that up. We know what the work is. We have great systems and supports. We have amazing teachers, and being able to put all those things together and really get kids back on track and back into reading and writing and accessing all the things that they want to do is really our main goal. That's why we exist. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Dattery. Well, I don't see any other questions for you, and so we do need to vote, though. So Ms. Richards, will you give us a roll call vote?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. Our next item is the consideration of the school unified improvement plans, and this is also an action item that requires a motion.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley Evans School District 6 approves the school improvement plans for the priority improvement schools.
Second.
Thank you both. Dr. Pilch, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, President Matthews. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Dattery.
All right, thank you, Dr. Pilch. And again, President Matthews, a member of the board, members of the board. Just very quickly, I outlined a lot for you in terms of process and what the timeline is within the District Unified Improvement Plans. That's the exact same timeline that our schools abide by within building and creating their school unified improvement plan. But just to highlight a few additional aspects to this, I think it's important to really note the benefits of this work, that as we're thinking about, we have a strategic plan, how do we take that down and break that down at the school level to really help them to focus? And that's really that alignment that we were talking about earlier, the documentation to make sure that they are documenting what those improvement plans are to move students along, being transparent, not only with us and you all as a school board, but also with their parents and families and their students. And then really making sure that the focus of the work that they're doing is best practice. And we have a lot of good inputs into knowing what that best practice is. And so really staying true to that and on point with that is critical. Now, as they plan this, they really go through a pretty thoughtful process. And first, they really analyze that data. They don't just say, this is what we would like to do, but they look at what is the data telling us and being objective about that. And then what do we know we need to do next? So that really comes with reviewing current performance, noticing those trends as we talked about earlier, and thinking again about what are their performance challenges and what are root causes that they need to identify. And then they think within those priority performance challenges, let's make sure that we're setting the right targets for ourselves and for our students. So it's not just about what are the targets for students, but also what are the adult targets that we're going to set for ourselves to achieve. And finally, then, let's put the action steps in place that are really going to make sure that we hit the targets that we said we're going to meet, and do that in a thoughtful way, both through the action steps that are identified as well as implementation benchmarks. And that's really the progress monitoring. So even when you asked earlier, what will we be monitoring? Those are the things that are identified within the plan. I want to also note for you, unlike in our District Unified Improvement Plan, schools are able to, per House Bill in 2016, that's 1440, at that time was put into motion rather, where it allows schools with a performance plan to submit a UIP on a biennial basis. So we every year have schools that are able to do that, and this year you don't have the plans for Hyman, Martinez, Maplewood, or Early College Academy because those are already on record. They did those last year. They will continue with those plans this year, and then they'll submit next year. Yeah. So again, the timeline is very much the same. The one thing that I would note for you is that we have been able to, and have done this for a few years, and it's been proven to be very helpful for our building leadership, and that is to have optional work sessions with the Colorado Department of Education, and specifically with Erin Lofton. She's worked with us for several years and has been just wonderful in her work. And I would be remiss if I didn't also point out Mr. West Tuttle and the work on site, our resident expert in this area, and how critical he has been in helping all of our schools, K-12, charters and non-charters, to really develop solid school unified improvement plans as well that are presented to you this evening. And so they really are following this same timeline, and again, brought to you this evening for your approval. And I just want to quickly point out to you the school focus areas that you see. These are kind of in some big buckets or cluster areas, as we noted. First, you see in many of the plans, and it might be worded in slightly different ways, but all around that quality first instruction and really supporting their teachers to have the skills and the strategies and the supports that they need to make sure that the instruction is spot on for all students to be academically proficient. And that second one you see in many different ways around this idea of making sure that they're personalizing that learning. So that really is in some ways really speaking to the MTSS process that we spoke of earlier, that when we're making sure that students' personalized needs are being met within those tiers, we're really supporting every student to be successful. Again, systems of support for students, maybe it might be, it's not at the personalized learning, but maybe for some of the schools, it's about what are the school-wide systems that they need to put in place that help support teachers and students in that area. Several noted the work around culture and climate, and really being thoughtful about the environments that they're creating, that those environments around equity and inclusiveness and fairness, and making sure that students and staff have a healthy and safe culture and climate in which to work and learn and grow. And finally, looking at data teams and data analysis, and the work in that area is seen in many of the different teams, different school UIPs. Many of them put a little bit of a hold on some of that work last year with COVID. Not all, but some did, and then bringing that back in and really making that an integral part of the work they do this year is critical. And then certainly for high schools is really thinking about that post-secondary readiness. This is the first year of the new graduation guidelines, enactment of that, and really making sure that they are on point and doing the work at the school level to make sure that all students continue to graduate on time. And so that post-secondary readiness and getting them ready for that next adventure in life is a huge focus as well. So that's really just some big buckets, as I mentioned, around what you see in the school unified improvement plans. So I thank you again for giving me just a moment to outline some of that work that our schools have gone through, and I'll take any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Dattery. Ms. Mueller.
So in presenting both the district improvement plan and the school improvement plan, I just wanted to get a sense of who were the people involved in looking at those plans and giving feedback and contributing to that.
So I will start at the district unified improvement plan. It's the academic achievement team really reviews the work that's happening at the schools and making sure that we're on point with that. So they take that primary work first, and then our district accountability committee has input and feedback, and we did that at our very first meeting. In fact, in September, we did that at that time. So those are kind of those primary, it's looking at the work of the schools, because we don't want to have a district unified improvement plan that is here and school unified improvement plans that are here. We need those to align. So we look at that, and that's really the development of that in consultation with our DAC.
Yeah, and I just wanted to get clarity. Parents serve on those committees,
Oh,
correct?
yes, yes, absolutely. District Accountability Committee is all comprised of parents. We do have one teacher and one principal, but by and large, it's our community of parents and the greater group. Yes, so there is that input, and they did an amazing job of really looking at that and giving some really great feedback that we were able to incorporate back in to our unified improvement plan. At the school level, the same thing happens, right? So it's developed by the team of teachers, whether they incorporate all of their teachers or at a building leadership, they need to think about what makes the most sense with the work that they're doing at the building level, and how they are gaining that feedback from all of their teachers and providing that input in creation of their school unified improvement plan. They too take it to their school accountability committee and have parents review that in one way or another as well, as a part of the process of a school unified improvement planning process. So That's best practice. Many of them are able to do that, and we certainly do that at the district level as well.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on our school improvement plans? I'm not seeing any.
Can I just add this? I would be remiss in not thanking the parents that do serve on the school improvement committees as well as the district accountability committee. I served on those committees myself, and it is open to parents to always be part of those, and we really appreciate the hard work that goes into them working on these plans. So thank you.
I would just add to that our schools are often looking for parents to serve on those school accountability committees. And so if you're a parent out there, I know that it's different work than PTO and things like that. It's a little more wonky, I guess, and getting into the weeds of testing and what schools are doing around achievement and student achievement, but it's a great way to serve this district. We certainly welcome the input of parents and want parents to be involved in this way. So thank you. Ms. Mueller, for bringing that up. Thank you, Dr. Dattery, for these reports. And we need to vote on this. So Ms. Richards.
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. Well, I think that is our last. We have public participation, but I don't believe we have anybody signed up tonight. All right. Well, that's all that we have tonight. Thank you for joining us, whether you were here in person or watching online. We appreciate your participation in your school district. This meeting is adjourned.